It's October. That means pumpkin time. And this is the first step of making a pumpkin pie. First of all, I washed the outside of the pumpkin, and then I cleaned out all the yucky seeds, which I did the best I could, but once I bake it, a lot of that will still just fall out. Then I placed about a ½ inch of water into my baking dish, and I'm just going to turn my pumpkin upside down. I'm going to bake it for, I don't know, it usually takes a couple of hours at 250 degrees, and I'll see you then. Okay, the first half is out of the oven, and how I test it is I just push it with my finger while it's still in the oven. It's really super hot. If I can indent it with just my finger, then it's done. The pumpkin is so hot right now that really it's painful to even touch it. I'm going to let it cool off a little bit before I even take it out of the water because it's just too hot to even touch. I've taken the cooked pumpkin out of the water. It's still extremely hot, and I'm going to take the uncooked half, go ahead and put it right down into this hot water and put it back in the oven and let it cook. It's just a tiny bit bigger than my pan, but it should be fine. Okay, the peel on the pumpkin actually comes off much easier if you can still do it while it's hot. It's only coming off in pretty small spots, so I'm probably just going to get a knife and peel it with a knife. I've peeled the pumpkin, and now I'm just going to gently cut it apart and put it in the bowl for storage or puree, which is generally what I end up doing. I really enjoy a nice squash soup which has a good pumpkin in it. Unfortunately, if I made a pot of it, I would be stuck eating it by myself, so I end up making a lot of pumpkin pastries and pies and that sort of stuff. Okay, so as you can see, the entire pumpkin is completely skinned and cooked. I keep it in a big bowl until I'm ready to puree it. I've tried to puree it in the past and just leave it pureed sitting in the refrigerator. Because there's no preservatives, it goes bad pretty quickly. I've tried freezing it. It loses all its flavor when I freeze it. So the best option that I found is just to chunk it and then not puree it until I'm ready to cook it. And I have this leftover pumpkin juice, which my dogs dearly love to drink. So I'm going to let that cool off and then pour it in the dog bowl for them. Alright, so I'm just going to puree this. And I'm going to do pumpkin pie first. I'll probably make muffins later. I found that this method is much easier than using a blender because a blender is a big pain to get the pumpkin out of and an even bigger pain to clean. Pumpkin pie is super easy to make. I started with 2 whole eggs and 1 egg yolk. There's my white. Next I'm going to add some sugar and my spices. I'll actually stick blend that together and then add my milk last. One thing I do a little different than most pumpkin pie recipes is I cut back on the cinnamon and put half the cinnamon, and then I actually put double the ginger, and I actually just put barely a pinch of the allspice, and I double my nutmeg. I found that it just makes a more pumpkin-y tasting pumpkin pie. And I have found that I get better results if I just pre-bake my pumpkin pie crust. All I do, I don't follow the directions. I just pre-bake it until it starts to want to puff up because I don't use the beans in the bottom. I don't want to take a chance of adding bean flavor to my crust. And so this pie crust has already been baked a little bit in the oven. It's just starting to puff up a little bit, so I took it out of the oven, and I'll be ready in just a moment to add my filling. You can see I have all my spices in here. I have about double the amount of ginger, just a smidge, it's less than 1/8 teaspoon of cloves. I have half the called for amount of cinnamon and double the called for amount of nutmeg and just a little. I actually like to use really high quality salt, so this is pink salt. One of the reasons why I like to make everything in my 4-cup measuring, Pyrex measuring, is easy peasy pouring, and so it just makes less of a mess. It's a much quicker cleanup. So the interesting thing about pumpkin pie is the first 15 minutes is at 425, and then I'll turn it down to 350 for 45 minutes. All right, and there you have it. Pumpkin pie, easy peasy, homemade. Much better for you than a store-bought. And now just to enjoy it.